But I think I would have recognised who I was. I'd have had that confidence to be the authentic me. And I don't think I ever knew the authentic me. I was lost and now I'm found. And I think that just sums it all up. I think I've lived this life where I really didn't know where I fitted in.
It felt like you were smiling with your face, but not with your eyes.
Yeah.
Hi, and welcome to Accelerating Your Wealth with your host, myself, Rebecca Robertson. I'm an independent financial advisor and wealth coach. I'm the director of Evolution Financial Planning, who is also our sponsor for today's show. If you're somebody that is not sure what to do with their finances, maybe you're working and you're not sure what to do with the bonuses you've got at work, or maybe you started a business and you've got profits and you're not sure what you should be doing to enable you to A, pay yourself more, or B, potentially retire earlier. Maybe you're somebody that's thinking about, do I overpay on the mortgage? You've received some inheritance. You've got lots of questions around your finances and what to do next. Then check out Evolution Financial Planning, who are regulated independent financial advisors and financial planners that can help you make some of those big decisions in life. Today I have a very dear friend who's been I've known for I want to say like 15, 16 years, and we've gone through a roller coaster of a journey together. And my friend Penny, welcome Penny.
Thanks, Rebecca.
Is also a friend and a client, and she's here to share real life stories with her journey of where she started. Gosh, in her 40s and now into her, how fabulous does she look? She's now in her 60s. Amazing. If I look this great in like 15 years time, I'll be so happy. And I want to share real people with real stories and their real experiences, because there's so much we can learn from each other. Where should we start?
I don't know. Where do you want to
Where
start?
should we start? I would like to point out that recently you said that your daughter sort of said that, in a nice way, she said that you're a corporate queen.
Yeah.
Which, I think is incredible. And when I first met you, you were a midwife and you worked for the NHS, and now you're a corporate queen. And I'd probably like to go more into the corporate stuff in a little bit. I think we need to sort of go back to the beginning. And we first met through networking.
Yep.
And you started to run your own business.
Yep. Yeah.
And your general sort of like the next phase of your story is you bought a property, so I helped you with that. Then you were getting divorced. Your parents died at a young age. You were 50, so that really changed your outlook.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then went through empty nesting, and then you got to now your 60s, and then thinking, what's next? I've outlived my parents more than 10 years, and you felt empty.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So we're going to talk through all of that. So there's going to be a lot to dig into. Yeah, there's a lot there, right? But let's start at the beginning. And when we first met, what made you go from working in the NHS to wanting to start your own business, first of all?
Okay, so I left school and I became a nurse. I trained as a nurse in the NHS, so 18. And then loved nursing, loved everything about it, became a midwife, worked on a neonatal intensive care unit, absolutely loved it. Then when I got married, had my first child, and I had a husband who worked up in the city, so the shift patterns just didn't work. So I feel now in hindsight, I was that person that said, okay, well, I'll sort of put my career on hold and I'll make it work for us as a family. So I trained as a health visitor, worked for I think it was like 20 years as a health visitor while the kids were growing up. It worked really well. I worked 3 days a week. I had holidays off, so I didn't have to sort of cover, holidays or didn't have to find cover holidays. And obviously,
what era was that? So what we talking? 19?
That was 19. So my kids were born 1993 and 1997.
Okay. So back then, it wasn't really the done thing for women to turn around and say, oh, no, I'm not giving up my career, right? That was the natural thing to happen. Do you think now, if you were doing that again, you would say things, knowing what you know now, would you say something different?
Absolutely. I think I had it in me then to climb up that sort of professional ladder. And there were a number of times when I got sort of little interim jobs which put me up to a more managerial role, but then I had to sort of step back again because I still needed to have that term time contract.
What makes you say absolutely? If I could do it differently again, I would. What makes you say that now in hindsight?
I just think in those days I felt I was just the mother. That the work was just a bit of a side to keep me occupied. I was just earning a bit of pin money, so just to sort of be able to buy the kids' clothes, to be able to go and have my hair done. I didn't feel that I was actually a professional, but there were people saying, "Well, why don't you want to go for this job?" And I was just like, "Well, I can't. It's not in my sort of remit." And I didn't ever think it would be, actually. I always thought, my mum was a nurse, I always thought I'm just going to be a nurse for the rest of my life, and I'll just earn this little salary, and that'll be it.
That'll be it. Yeah. So in hindsight, why would you do that differently? I know you couldn't, but if you could, at the time you couldn't, but if you could, what would be your driver now to say, no, putting the brakes on this, I want to do this differently? For you, is it because of just having that career progression? What would that have meant to you to have that career progression?
So now I have I've completely changed my career. I obviously set up my own business, and but we'll talk about that later. But I just think, in hindsight, I would have found myself earlier. I feel I've sort of basically just found myself for the past 10 years. But I think I would have recognised who I was. I'd have had that confidence to be the authentic me. And I don't think I ever knew the authentic me at that time.
At that point.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay, so let's move on from that. I could dig into that so much, but I think more is going to come up as we go along.
Yeah.
So then, taking you back to what you were saying, so you were in the 90s, you'd had your children, you were working in the NHS. What then drove you then to start a business after that?
So I became really despondent in the NHS. My first son didn't sleep very well. I really got into sort of sleep and children's behaviour, and I wasn't very happy in my health visiting job. There were a couple of people who weren't making my life very easy, and in hindsight now, I recognise that I think they were almost like jealous of me, so they wanted to make my life not very easy. So I'm not very good at confrontation. So my sort of reaction was, okay, I'm going to get out of here. I'll leave you all behind. I'm going to get out of here. And I did, because my husband did have a good job. I had the sort of funds to be able to set up a business. So I got out of the NHS and I set up a business as a private health visitor and children's sleep consultant, which went really well. Though that's when I met you through networking.
Yeah.
So I started to network and meet other people, and it made me sort of recognise how small the NHS is, and that there's so much else going on outside of that environment.
Yeah. And so that's when you started to think about buying your own property.
Yeah, I had an uncle who I got quite a large inheritance from. He wasn't married, had no children. So me and my brother and sister got an inheritance from him. And obviously I didn't want this money just to sort of be whittled away. A fair chunk of it did go to pay off some of our mortgage, but I made sure that I really felt that I needed to keep some behind for me. So I invested some money. I wanted to invest some money in a flat, which ultimately would be an investment for my kids, was
Right.
the idea.
Why do women do that? So you might have a small NHS pension, you've given up your career, you're relying on your husband's income, you're then using a lump sum that you've had from an inheritance from your uncle to pay off the mortgage. And then, which I know you're a family unit, you're working together. I totally get that. You had the hindsight to go, okay, actually, I need to have some of this money. But then you're not thinking of yourself, you're thinking of the kids. Mm-hmm. Why do we do that?
I have no idea, because actually recently I have also given my kids a chunk of money because I eventually had to sell the flat. And as part of my divorce, but I then felt I still needed to give them some money. I don't know why, because they earn really good wages and they're fine, but it's sort of almost like a guilt thing. I think
from a legacy perspective, we're always wanting to give back. Like, my husband's the same. He's thinking about our kids' future and how that legacy is passed on. And he's saying to his dad, he's very awkward around having this kind of conversation with anybody when it comes to legacy and inheritance. But he's saying, like, I don't want it, give it to the kid. Like we have that kind of mentality, don't we?
Yeah.
I think as I don't know if it's a generational thing, but I think as women, we particularly then focus on the children. And I know women that are in their, say, late 50s that have very little pension provision, and the money that they have had, this little spare money they have had, they've paid for their kids to go through uni, and they've literally not, just about put food on the table to look after themselves, but they've paid for their kids to go through uni so they don't have to come out of a debt. And I think, we need to learn to look after ourselves first a bit more before we can offer them support. Because I've had a personal family situation where a family member hasn't done that. They've looked after everybody else, and then they've had nowhere to live themselves.
Yeah.
And then they're reliant on their children to live with their children because they can't keep a roof over their head.
Yeah. And I think, I think mine was, it was, like when I say guilt, I think it was guilt of sort of what I've done to my children in my, by...
That's
by
harsh. That's
Oh
hard.
my gosh. Yeah.
How
absolutely.
hard do you want to be on yourself,
Yeah,
Penny?
exactly. I know. And,
Well, did they go through that much, really? Like,
well, probably not. But I have that perception that I don't think I have ruined their life, but while I was going through the divorce, I that's how I felt.
you felt.
Yeah. And it's almost like, I wanted to fix things for them, and I think historically, my budgeting and spending and thing has been almost around a fix. And so I was like, okay, this will fix them. This will make it all better. They'll realise that I haven't run off and stolen all my dad's money, which I really never did. But they can have this. I'm willing to do it. Some days I regret doing that, but I feel comfortable that they've got something from me.
Yeah, but you've done that in a sensible degree. You've not left yourself destitute.
No.
Not by any stretch.
No.
It hasn't like you've taken 25% a lump sum out of your pension and given it to your kids. You haven't cashed in your other investments and given it to your kids.
Yeah.
You're talking money that is spare that you're able to forego.
Yeah.
I think you have put the mask on first in that example, but maybe I think there's people that do that when they haven't looked after themselves first. They haven't had financial advice. They haven't looked at their planning, their finances, their future first.
Yeah.
And then they've given without thinking.
Yeah.
So you started a business. You bought your first property, which I did the mortgage for you many moons ago. It feels like a lifetime ago. And then at some point you realised, I don't want to be in this relationship anymore. So talk a little bit about that.
So, obviously, I got married, had kids, felt this was going to be my life. It was lovely. We had a lovely lifestyle, but there just was something missing. And as I said before, my husband worked in the city. He wasn't around very much. He worked really hard, but left early morning, came back late in the evening, weekends. He wasn't doing anything. And I was like, is this the life that I want to lead? And as I was meeting more people through networking and getting outside my sort of normal friendship group, I realised that there was life outside. I also embarked on a master's degree in sort of like a psychotherapy type degree, and just learnt so much from other people about just life in general. And it just started triggering things for me and thinking, am I the happiest person? Are we as a family the happiest family? Or are we, again, just using sticky plasters to sort of make everything look lovely? Because on the surface,
it looked great. Yeah. You had a lovely house. You had like this basement kitchen with a massive island and your fancy crockery that I absolutely ripped the big Mickey out of you even back then. And you still have it now, right?
I do. I love my crockery.
Literally, you've moved from Kent to another county about 3 times. You've remarried, and the one thing that has gone with you the whole way is your crockery. And you got it in the divorce, and you've still got it now.
And I will say it's Emma Bridgewater for anyone listening, and they might understand. But there is sort of an addiction, and my ex-husband did say, you're addicted to that. But it's my comfort blanket. And even this Christmas, I was feeling a little bit, washed out. And I saw something on Instagram. Actually, my son sent it to me, and it was someone saying, I've got a cold, and the answer was to go and buy an Emma Bridgewater mug. And I was straight up to that shop, like, okay, I need some retail therapy. And it is funny how that Emma Bridgewater is sort of almost like a staple of my life and has followed me. But yeah, I did have a really, really comfortable life. We had a nice time, but I just felt this wasn't, as I mentioned it before, the authentic me. I felt there was something else in me, and I wasn't happy. I'd been on antidepressants. I was definitely self-medicating with alcohol. I was really putting on a big front.
And I felt that because I don't know, I have sort of neurological tendencies. I'm not going to put a label on it just at this point, but I probably could, but just for this conversation, it's not relevant. But I'm able to sort of spot people's body language. And as your friend at the time, I could spot, like, it felt like you were smiling with your face, but not with your eyes.
Yeah. You're absolutely spot on. And I feel like I was just running through, that field that there's no end to. And yet there was just something not right. And I spoke to various people. I mean, we had been to sort of therapy, sort of couples therapy when I was sort of around about 40. And I was just like, okay, I'll try and make this work. So my best effort was to make it work.
Yeah.
But as I neared that age of 50, I started getting into exercise. Again, people I'd met through networking, got into exercise and was like, wow, this is amazing. This has made me feel so different, gave me confidence. It was just really enlightening.
It's interesting how that happens, isn't it? Because I used to hate exercise, and I'm not saying I'm not like you with your Vitality app, making sure you've got so many, like my husband, 8 points every day. I'm just literally on the brink of the edge of it at the moment. But once I got over the initial pain of my body going into panic and saying, no, this is not, you haven't fallen over and hurt yourself, or you've not had a riding accident, your body's not in pain, this is not a trauma, this is not an emergency, actually this is exercise. I went, oh, okay, this is what I should feel like. And after I got over that initial part and it started to get a bit easier and a bit easier, I started to begin to actually enjoy that empowerment it gave me, like the feeling it gave me, the strength it made me feel, like this internal strength I don't think you can get many other ways.
Definitely. And I'd been on antidepressants, and my ex-husband was saying, you're depressed, you need to go back on those tablets. And I was like, I don't think I'm depressed. That's not what it is. In hindsight, I think it was the big bad perimenopause creeping up on me. And anyway, it helped. It really changed me. And the people I met through the gym, again, it was just like, these people are amazing. So, my kids were now one was coming out of uni, one was just about to start uni. And I just thought, and my parents also died in their 50s. So I was like 2 years before they were 50. And I was just like,
that's massive. That's a big thing.
It was.
I find with many clients that when they've had something quite close family member, someone that's brought them up, when they've died at an early age, it really affects us all when we lose a parent, especially, of course. But when they're young, there's something quite impactful about that.
And they both died quite suddenly. Well, my mum had a brain tumour and was like 3 months from start to finish, and my dad did die very suddenly of something.
Was it close together as well?
2 years between them.
That's quite close.
Mum was 56 and my dad was 58. So as I was going into that 50, I was just like, actually, I need to be the fittest and healthiest I can be,
of course,
to survive.
Yeah, of course.
Past that,
it was like a survival instinct.
It absolutely was.
Yeah,
and I don't think my ex-husband really got it, and he again was like, you're addicted to exercise, and I was like, I'm not.
But he was into going out drinking quite a lot in wine bars and drinking after work, big lavish meals. I'm probably not just talking 3 courses, probably 5 courses. He was I'm not going to talk about him personally, but he wasn't into fitness, shall we say?
No, and
so
he
was probably
didn't
quite
want
strange
to join me either.
No,
so the option was there as I was getting fitter. The option was there to come and join me, but what actually happened was it really sort of drove us apart. And I was finding more confidence in myself physically and emotionally. And literally I was flying and I was like, I'm finding this person, and it was getting quite exciting. And it was like I was actually leaving people behind. And
That's hard as well, right? Because I think we move on, we grow, and we no longer then fit in with that narrative. Like when, I won't stand around at the school gates moaning about the weather or moaning about, the queue in the supermarket. That's just not my vibe.
Yeah.
I don't like that sort of small talk kind of mentality. It's positive energy, not in a toxic positivity kind of way.
Yeah.
I'm happy with honest conversations, of course, but I can't be doing with those just saying things to say things for the sake of it. And that's also hard because you're then having to sort of realise that person's not for you.
Yeah.
It's quite a hard transition as a woman because you go through these phases of having like your mummy group friends and you think they're going to stay with you, a bit like your school friends, they're going to stay with you. I mean, do you know any of your school friends? Like, you still friends with
A couple of them, but yeah.
People move on,
exactly,
we change, right?
Exactly, yeah. And I felt we had a very small, close-knit group of friends, and it was actually how, I'm going to sort of ruin that, which I actually did. But it was that time when I was just like, this is about me. And there was one friend of mine who's in Rochester, absolutely lovely, who I met during my when I was private health visiting. She's actually a psychotherapist, and she sort of encouraged me to go and go onto the master's course. And I used to say to her, I just feel really selfish doing this. And she said, no, Penny, this is all about self-care. Forget the bit of selfish, add the care to it. And it's so important for you to self-care, which I was like, you're so right. I've never done that. So I started living this life of self-caring, which initially I thought was selfish because I was leaving everybody behind. But the more I started caring, the stronger I got, the more confident I got. I just found.
If you saw a vision or like 10 years before that, and you saw this future Penny, what would you have thought of that Penny? What would be your impression of that Penny? Would you be aspiring, thinking, "Oh, look at her," or do you think there'd have been a bit of jealousy or a bit of like negativity, internal voices going on?
Probably a mixture of all of those things.
Okay.
I would have thought I could never be that person.
Right.
I would not have ever thought that I had it in me.
Yeah.
To have that confidence to basically change my life.
Yeah. Because when I see certain people doing certain things, looking a certain way, and the dial of it has dialed down a lot over the years, but there's still a little bit there. I think pretentious, or I think up themselves. And actually, it's just their self-care buttons. It's just them looking after themselves. But my perception of the way that they look after themselves is so extraordinary that I then think, well, that's just pretentious or that's selfish. And that's what we often worry about, what other people think of us. But actually, I find those things that are our triggers, and I'm not a psychologist, but the things that are our triggers and affect us by other people are actually how we judge ourselves.
Absolutely, yeah. It's how the world
You're the one
works.
with the masters, not me.
Yeah.
You can explain it probably better than that. But yeah, so
it's not rocket science at the end of the day, but we overthink and we overcomplicate things. And I think if you what I did, and not in any. I didn't mean to do it. It just evolved. It was just an organic evolution, really. That you're just like, oh wow. So actually, this is how you should care about yourself. You should be selfish, or self-caring, And I don't, obviously there are people out there who do that just naturally, but there's so many women, particularly, who just don't do that. They just put themselves at the bottom of the pile, which I definitely did.
But do you not think that's like a generational thing? If you look at our parents, our grandparents, about where women are sort of meant to be in society, that mentality of, you're meant to be at the kitchen sink kind of attitude. And I think that's sort of almost installed in some of us, that's all we're allowed to have. That's all we're entitled to. Yep. So then to be any more entitled is then to be big-headed or selfish or any of any of those other names or labels you want to call it.
And I think I was born, my dad was in the army, my mother, we followed him around, my mother was a nurse, and I think you sort of start to you think that you're going to live the same life as them, and I was living that life. I was, husband with who was the main breadwinner. I was just, getting the pocket money in and treating people with my salary, not really saving anything because I didn't need to.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of people who still live in that way.
100%.
Yeah.
There's many, and I find it worrying still, although I'm seeing a lot more women in their 20s and 30s making different decisions. They're having career breaks, but they're then still investing in their pensions. They're not having as big a gap in their pensions, but not everyone's doing that.
Yeah.
And so actually it's not moved on as much as I think sometimes think. I think some corporate companies, employers have, put things in place from employment law perspective for paternity leave and maternity leave, etc. But actually the British household makeup, religion aside, actually hasn't greatly changed. There is probably a percentage of around 10, 15, 20% that things have changed.
Yeah.
But for 80, 75% of the rest of the I don't know the exact, I'm making these percentages up, but for the majority of normal households, it's still very much, there's a little bit of way forward because men are still I'm seeing more dads on the school run with my 9-year-old than I did with my 17-year-old when she was at primary school 10 years ago. You didn't see a school dad anywhere.
No.
Now I see maybe, I'd say like 10%, maybe 15%. So there is movement.
And it is interesting you say that. So my daughter now has, she said, she's left uni, she's got a really good job, she's earning more than me. But she said, no, I want to be the main breadwinner. And that's what I feel, that's almost what I've given her by...
Yeah, isn't that great?
Yeah, so if I'd stayed as the nurse, yeah, exactly. I've gone off, there's been some heartache in between. But, I've shown her and my son what you can do,
changing the narrative. Amazing. So let's go back to the divorce, because a lot of women might be, it's January as we record this.
Yes.
It might be a time where people are reflecting, New Year.
Yeah.
And they're thinking, I'm hearing more and more women in their 40s and 50s that are thinking like you were thinking when you were in your 40s, thinking, hang on a minute, this is not what I signed up for.
Yeah.
I don't want to live this kind of life anymore. There must be more. And I think there's a lot of men that are struggling as well.
Yeah.
Let's put the other side of the coin. They're having to maybe change their lifestyle and change the way and grow a lot quicker than they maybe are used to, than what they saw from their parent, from their dad. It's a very different, narrative. So I think women are evolving and men are going, what's going on?
Yes.
And I'm quite lucky that my husband does do a lot of personal development. He works out quite a lot. He works in a kind of corporate role where he looks after people, so he has to be very attuned to what's going on around him. And so I'm quite lucky in that respect. But I recognise that for some women, it's not always about pointing the blame at the men. It's just actually saying they're not happy anymore. So where do people start if they're thinking like that? Like if they're in that situation right now, listening to this, where do they start? What should they do first?
I think the biggest thing for me was to start spreading your wings a little bit, start talking to people, start exploring how other people have managed or have navigated the whole divorce process. And again, and one friend that I spoke to, a very good friend of mine, when I started speaking to her, she said, Penny, I just want to say to you, the grass is not always greener. Really think carefully about what you want to do.
Hey, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I just got to let you know, are you enjoying the shows? If you are and there's more you want to listen to, then check out our quiz. You'll find the link below. You can fill out these questions and it will basically tell you what area of your finances you should focus on. So it might be business, it might be you're getting divorced, it might be investing. There's about 9 categories. And what it will give you is a playlist to the relevant categories of all the shows we've done that apply to that area and that subject.
So what it allows you to do is super fast learn about the subject that you need to know super quick without having to scroll through about over 130 episodes currently. So I hope you find that helpful, and do let us know of your feedback leave us a review via your preferred platform. Thanks.
And, that it was really important for me, because I'm just like, oh my goodness, I thought
How
she'd
do you
go.
know?
Yeah.
It's almost like there's a brick wall and you wouldn't know what's over it,
And
right?
there is a brick wall and you do not know what's over it. So it is a really brave decision. So I think before you make that decision, talk to as many people as you can. I actually went for singles, like marriage therapy as well.
Yeah.
I hadn't told my husband until actually we I sort of said to him, actually, I want to leave. So that really helped me again, just navigate the process. I read books. So it wasn't like I woke up one morning and saying, that's it. I spent, from 40 to 50 probably, just thinking about it and thinking, how can I navigate this? And during that time, I was trying to make it work. I was like, okay, if I get to 50, I'll just really, in fact, just before I decided that I need to go, we'd booked a 25th wedding anniversary trip to the Grenada, flying
that.
first class. So, we were making it work, but then it's almost like I wouldn't call it a midlife crisis because it had been going on for a long time, but I just thought, it's now or never.
Yeah.
I need to do something. So it's almost like as I was turning 50, going into that decade when my parents died, if I don't do it now, I think I'll sit in my comfort zone and there won't be another opportunity.
Was there a thought process around, I'm 50, there's no point, I might as well just stick with what I've got?
Yeah, absolutely. It was a very sort of, I can carry on to, just sort of doing what I've been doing, sort of making it work, seeing if anything changes, go on a nice holiday, see if that sort of makes anything better. And, that was sort of like, oh, should we just go on the holiday and we'll see if, things get better. But that was a recurring thing with, it happened many times before. And I was just like, no, now is the time. So I think do your research, but there will be a time when you just go,
Enough's enough.
it's it. This is it. I'm ready to climb that wall or break that wall down or whatever you're going to do with that wall. I'm ready now.
So you were ready. You did the deed. You said what you needed to say. You probably lived with each other in the same house for a while,
Yes,
but eventually lawyers were involved and you moved out.
Yeah.
And you rented somewhere within like a couple of miles from the main house, which he was paying the rent on.
Yeah, so I left the house. Things got nasty. I thought it was going to be very easy. And when we first had the conversation, it was like, he said, yeah, let's just do this amicably. It'll be fine. We'll do it.
Interesting how it always starts like that.
But yeah, it got nasty. And he had a shit hot lawyer. I had a collaborative lawyer. I wanted it to stay nice and calm, but it got nasty.
For you or for the kids or for just everybody?
Everybody, yeah.
Yeah.
And to a point where my daughter said, you need to move out.
Wow.
My solicitor had been saying, do not move out.
Yeah, that's the one rule.
This will stall something.
That's one of the big rules.
And it's again that guilt. Well, okay, if she thinks I need to move out, then I need to move out.
Because you were the problem, right?
As the bad person,
Yeah, you were the. Yeah.
So that was really painful. That really hurt.
Yeah.
That was probably the worst bit.
I remember seeing you around that time when you had moved, and I remember coming to see you in the house there.
Yeah.
And I'd probably say it's one of the lowest I've seen you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was a really, really tough time. And so literally I moved out to rented accommodation, which, my husband very kindly said he'd pay. But, in hindsight, I understand all that his lawyer had obviously said, pay, keep her happy, then she'll accept whatever's
going on. Yeah.
So, you just have to have your wits about you, which I don't think I really did. I felt I was being emotionally sort of grounded down. And I moved to the house. It was a nice little house, 2 bedrooms. I felt bad because one Christmas, my son had to sleep on the sofa. I literally took stuff from my marital home, just what I needed, and left all the rest behind. So I have no idea what I do know because it all went in a skip when he moved, because my kids have told me. But, I was just like, actually, I don't need these things. Or they went to someone else's who was also setting up a new home. But I was like, I don't need these things in my life anymore. It was actually quite a good cleanse.
You took the cutlery.
The crockery,
The crockery
has continued to
that went with you.
Absolutely, that was so important. Yeah.
Everything else,
Yes,
the
nothing
dog
mattered.
at the time,
Yeah, took the dog and the crockery.
Yeah, got it. Priorities. I mean, do you think that solicitors should be more aware about the vulnerability of that process?
Yeah.
Because, surely the collaborative lawyer that you had would have been known how badass the other solicitor was. Surely they should be giving you a bit of a guidance around that.
It was a very gentle guidance, and it was, he'd say, oh, maybe you should go and just, get a barrister. And I was like, well, I don't even know where to find a barrister. And that was I did not know where to find a barrister. And it just scared me that I'd be talking to someone who might then, send me in another direction. I had a husband who was saying, we don't want to take this to court because it'll be a complete waste of money. But at the same time, you're not having this chunk of my money. And I just felt completely lost. I
hear it so much.
It was an awful time. So yeah, I absolutely agree. And in fact, it just takes me back because I remember coming to a sort of networking things of yours, which was about divorce.
Yeah, we ran them with a solicitor. Yeah.
And that was so interesting. But I think I sort of took quite a lot away from that, a lot of confidence that actually I can do this. But yeah, when you're all in the mix, your brain doesn't work properly at all. Well, my brain didn't work. And just barrister, all these, my ex-husband's lawyer, some of the letters that I got were just horrendous. And I felt, well, I haven't got the money to pay for court proceedings. So I'm just going to have to sit here and, just sort of wait. And it literally took sort of 2.5 years.
So hindsight, what would you do differently?
Definitely talk to people, get advice around a lawyer. I gave my details of the solicitor I used to somebody else and they said he was good to begin with, but then she had to move on again.
Yeah.
I wish I had gone through that process, but it's all about learning.
Would you have gone to court?
I can't answer that question.
No.
I think if I'd had a really good barrister or lawyer, potentially I would have done.
Yeah.
I'm happy I didn't because I feel I can hold my head up high now and say I did what he wanted me to do.
Yeah.
And I've come out of it and I've shown that I can live.
But thankfully you still walked away with a slice of the pension,
yes,
which I obviously is a big, like I'm banging that drum for a lot of people, and you still kept a roof over your head.
And even when I knew I was going to get divorced, I didn't know that I was entitled to half of that pension, that I had no idea. So that was, I didn't get divorced thinking I'm going to take all his money. I got divorced because I needed to move on.
Yeah, but equally, if you'd had a career and you had a different conversation in the 90s when you had the children and you were 50-50, then it would have been 50-50.
Yes.
So, you've made a decision in that time that he would go off and work and earn the money.
Yeah.
But it's not like, that's being split into your pension and his pension. And that's what's still happening today. And there's, it's lovely getting married. I'm happily married. It's in 9 months' time, it's our 20th wedding anniversary. Wow. Don't get me wrong. I'm not against marriage, quite obviously. But we're very open about those conversations. We're very clear on what's what and who's who. And who pays for what and what will happen with this and what would happen with that. And those conversations aren't talked about because people don't like talking about money anyway, let alone talking about potentially what would happen if. Yeah.
So in the end, it wasn't 50-50. It got very complicated.
Yeah.
But in the end, I was happy with
what you had,
what I got. Yeah.
And then so you bought your own place.
Yep.
Actually, even closer to the matrimony home. It was round the corner.
Yeah.
And then you started having your own friends and going out socially. And I remember coming to your house then. I don't actually do house visits anymore. So I feel like I think you have benefits. It's like friends with benefits kind of thing. And you started budgeting and you started to learn that, you had quite an affluent, you'd already had into budget, but when you were living in the first house rented, some of those bills were covered by the joint account. But once the divorce had gone through, the money had come through, you bought your own place, then you had to actually be a sole person on your own. Yeah. So how did that feel?
Wow. So that was a really big thing for me because I've never budgeted. Even when I was like a student nurse, I was always like living on that last penny or that overdraft coming in. And, I remember getting a credit card and like going, oh my God, So budgeting for me had never ever happened.
Yeah.
Again, my ex-husband never budgeted. He never opened his tax bill. It was just like we lived this life of,
Didn't have to worry about it.
So having my own house, my own bills was really exciting. But then it was just like, oh my God, I've now got to really sort of track all this money, which is where,
We sat down and we And the biggest thing you struggled with is the realisation that you might not be able to have a big holiday.
Yeah.
That was your biggest stress at the
or
time.
any holiday.
Any holiday, actually, yeah. And you said we'd invested some of your money and you were like, well, if I need like some of that to go on holiday, and we had to have a bit of a conversation around that, sort of saying that, we should keep this money invested. If you save a little bit, then you could like do this in like maybe 6 months' time. And your face was like, no. It was almost like you want to say no to me, but it was your money, of course. It's not for me to tell you what to do. But I was obviously trying to retain as much of your wealth so you could settle into this new routine and then work out what's what, because otherwise don't get me wrong, like there are people where it's important to treat yourself. You've gone through such a stressful period. It's right to, but at the same time you had just bought the house, you'd had the garden done, you'd had some decorating done, you had one of the kids' bedrooms fixed. There were other things and other costs going on that then made me say, maybe we need to just hold off on the lavish holiday.
Yeah, absolutely. I still haven't had that lavish holiday. Actually, I did.
You have. But that's interesting because you've actually remarried. Yes. You're now 60 and you're happily remarried.
Yes.
Was it 2024, 2025 you got married?
2024, October.
Okay.
So just over a year ago.
You looked beautiful, by the way.
Oh,
you looked such lovely photos.
It was such a nice day.
Yeah, it looked amazing. And how happy you seem now in comparison.
Yeah.
So now you look back, that was like 10 years ago.
Yeah. So, it is from 50 to 60. It's a decade.
It's crazy.
I feel like, I've been through this crazy decade of reinventing myself.
And then so you moved out of Kent, you moved to another county, and then you started a new career.
Yeah.
Pretty much all over again, because you then had gone back to the NHS.
I had, because I had to stop my business because I couldn't. I needed money. I needed security. I needed the NHS pension.
Yeah.
I needed the sick time. So if anything happened to me, I would get sick leave.
Yeah.
So, the benefits of the NHS, I'm never going to knock those.
No.
And I went back and obviously I managed to get a job immediately. And in that time, I also trained as a personal trainer, as you know, and I was doing some extra work to just sort of bump up my salary, working in the evenings as a personal trainer with a sort of she's a really good friend now. We're really good friends in this sort of really small company. But again, that kept me going. But I was just like working constantly.
Yeah. And then you started dating this guy.
Yep.
And then you moved in with him.
I moved in with him.
In another county. So that was when you moved away. Yeah. And that's when you changed jobs, right?
Yeah. So I moved up to, I had a job in the NHS. I went back as a health visitor, but the same reasons why I left were still there. And I'd always vowed I'd never go back to something. I'd always move forward. So I then found a job as an ADHD specialist nurse down in Kent, but wanted to move up to Essex and I couldn't find a similar job. So actually, again, had to go back into health visiting, which was, I think Medway's bad. Well, this was awful.
Okay.
And then the beauty of LinkedIn, I got a call from a recruiter saying, would you be interested in this job in a company with an ADHD testing device? And I was like, oh yeah, I've used that in my clinics. I know exactly what you're talking about. Rest is history. I sent my CV, went for the interview, and now I've got this job.
How long have you been there now?
4.5 years.
So what's the company called?
The company's called QB Tech.
Okay.
And it's a Swedish company, and we have software and hardware devices that called QB Test and QB Check that measure the 3 core symptoms of ADHD objectively.
Okay, so you're in your 60s, you've gone through perimenopause, which if you have a neurological thing going on is like much worse as a woman. Mm-hmm. You've gone through divorce, you've gone through a whole like fitness journey, reinvented yourself, had children, been a nurse for many, many years, worked with children, worked with young children, then gone on to be an ADHD nurse, and then you're working for an ADHD company. And then how long have you been working there now?
4.5 years.
4.5 years. So you've been working there for quite a number of years before you realised, I think I might have ADHD.
Exactly.
Why was there such a delayed understanding of that?
In a way, I didn't sort of really want to have it because, I do think, there's that whole, when I started, health visiting, ADHD wasn't a thing, and it's only sort of developed over the past few years. But there were more and more sort of conversation I was having. I was like, oh, maybe I have. Maybe shall I explore it a little bit more? But there are those people, where people go, oh, don't believe in it. It's not actually happening. It's not a thing. So I didn't want to be that person where why are you getting a diagnosis at the age of 60? Anyway, I turned 60, felt completely empty, thought that whole decade of fighting was just like, what happens now? So I actually sought some therapy with somebody who is an ADHD coach and a therapist. And I was just looking back at, why I, everything had happened in my life and thinking, was there any trauma? What's gone on? Obviously, there has been trauma. But the alarm, it started to come. So I was like, oh my God, I think I might have ADHD. And the therapist was like, nodding, not telling me, yes, I think you have, but nodding. And I came sort of one of the last sessions I had, so I'm going to go for an assessment, which lots of people don't want to. I mean, I decided to go for a private assessment because I wanted to know. I just wanted that validation.
What would you have done if they'd said you wasn't? Because I've had that happen to a friend's daughter, and it was actually devastating. Yeah, because it would give people answers, right? Yeah. If I had my dyslexia diagnosis August 2025, and I knew from the test I was failing miserably at what they were asking me. I was like, why do I not know this? This is really weird. Yeah. It's not a normal kind of test, by the way. It's not, spelling or reading. It's much more complicated than that. And if they'd have said to me that I wasn't, I was really struggling in my mind while I was waiting for the report. Yeah. And if they'd have said no, how would you have felt if they would have said no?
Well, it's interesting because the test that we do at where I work, I actually got full. I got
you got full marks.
But ours is not a diagnostic test. So it looks at other things. And I was like, well, if I show this to the psychiatrist, they're going to go, well, you haven't got ADHD. But I knew, I'd found my old school reports. They all said, she should work harder. She spends too much time, staring out of windows. The whole budgeting thing, everything just
spending
made
habits,
sense. Spending, impulsivity, impulsive spending.
Yeah.
It just all made such sense. My whole life made sense. My whole self-medicating, I wasn't depressed. It was about, my ADHD.
Yeah.
So I did think that he would turn around and say, well, no. And that was my biggest fear. But actually the psychiatrist said, well, yeah, you're 60. You've learnt to live with this. And
masking, all those years of masking. You became a pro at it. You were masking in your...
But my whole life is exhausting, masking it, pretending I haven't got it, pretending I'm... Well, I didn't even think I was masking because you get to be such a pro.
Yeah.
So got that diagnosis, and it's been really validating of my life, really.
So you went through empty nesting, and then you've become like a 60 empty nester. You woke up and realised, I've outlived my parents by 10 years. You look great, you're fit, you're healthy, got a great job, remarried, great happy relationship, been on some great holidays together. You've mastered so much. But you felt empty. Mm-hmm. So you described it as feeling quite down, quite empty. Mm-hmm. And so that drove you to get some answers, which then you had the ADHD diagnosis. Yeah. How do you feel now?
Like a different person. I actually feel that I was thinking on the way in, there's a little song by Newton Faulkner, and there's a line in it saying, I was lost and now I'm found. And I think that just sums it all up. I think I've lived this life where I really didn't know where I fitted in. I tried to fit in. I really did try my best at everything, but I just couldn't. And I think when I started the fitness, that was my first sort of part of I know where I'm going. And it's just amazing, isn't it, where things will take you on that path. And I just feel everything's sort of come together. I'm not saying everything's perfect, because nothing is ever perfect.
No.
But everything just seems to have fitted into place. And my confidence has just, literally from the day I was 60 in July, I felt, oh my God, what am I doing? And after that sort of validation of that diagnosis, I've sort of grown and sort of learnt and read. And actually, I've just signed up to become an ADHD coach. So I'm really excited.
Amazing.
That, yeah.
So what advice would you give to people? Like, what's Penny's life advice? What advice do you give to your daughter? I know your daughter is incredibly independent. You've already said that she wants to be the main breadwinner. You've obviously done something right there. What advice have you given her? What advice would you give listeners?
Definitely follow your gut. I think your gut is the, physically, emotionally, is where everything sits. Follow that gut feeling. Scaffold yourself. Make sure you've got people around you. So find your tribe. I've really found my tribe. My tribe, other tribe that I sort of spent 20 years with, has just disappeared, really. I've found my tribe. I've hooked up with friends who perhaps I wasn't with when I was in my marriage because it didn't fit with that marriage, but hooked up with them, these really genuine people. So find those people. They are out there, and ask questions. Be curious, be inquisitive.
Do you think now with social media it's hard to make female friendships? No. Easier?
Yeah, definitely. I have female friends, but
Yeah.
I've never historically had sort of best mates.
Yeah.
Probably around my neurodiversity. But now I'm finding myself being more confident as a woman. I can speak more confidently.
Approach people.
Yeah.
How did your ADHD affect those relationships then? Just you mentioned probably because of what do you mean in that sense?
The new relationships or the past relationships?
When you're either.
Yeah. I just think it's about recognizing who you are. And I think, whether that is just turning 60 and becoming an adult, or whether that is something around recognizing, who you are, what you're made of, and why you behave in particular ways.
So I think that's easier when you have your children are off to university, or you've got to a pinnacle point of your career and you're at that point where you're just, you're coasting along and everything, it's hard work, but you're doing okay. You've done the masters, you've done the things. But when you sort of go back and you think, Penny not in the 90s, so like in your 30s, your 20s, and your 30s, what, those maybe that are mums that are listening that haven't reached that pinnacle point, they are maybe having to work around the school run. Where would you say they start? How do they find themselves? You've worked with mums, like you've worked with newborn children. So it's not as simple, it's not as simple as go and read a book. Like it's not as easy as that. And if you're thrown together with, mums of a certain group, maybe where you live, or you're thrown together because they go to a certain school, they're not necessarily people that you would go and seek out. So where do mums start?
I think as young mums, I think you will find those people, but there's a lot of people you have to get rid of along the way. So don't feel because you are part of a group that you have to stay part of that group. If you feel uncomfortable, have the confidence to self-care and move on, away.
I think you're right. So going back to that self-care piece, and one of many, which is a community I've been part of for a long time, they do like a needs creed where you assess your basic needs and are your basic needs being met, and that could be as simple as drinking enough water, having enough sleep, are you nutritionally eating the right things, are you having enough time to prepare meals for yourself, not just everybody else, and looking at the basics of asking the question. And then what I found for me is that when I did start to do those things, I could listen to that intuition. Whereas all the time your basic needs aren't being met and you're living in this rushy kind of environment where you're operating basically 100% out of your head, then you can't listen to your intuition. They just don't line up.
And I think that's right. What came into my head then was, don't follow the crowd. Follow your instincts. Because following the crowd can take you somewhere where, you can get yourself into a bit of trouble. So, and I think I was not following my instincts. I was following the crowd. I used to, drink. People, and I used to think, if I don't drink, I'm not funny, and it gave me confidence. But then, people go. I mean, one of my best friends from the past would, go, "Oh, Penny, she's mad as a box of frogs." So I would have this persona where I'm just like that mad, stupid person who just brings a bit of madness but
we all would with a bottle of wine.
Yeah, exactly. and now I'm just like, I'm not actually mad. I actually have given myself the time to understand what I'm made of.
No, you're a corporate queen. So it's been amazing. We've talked about so much.
Oh my goodness, yeah.
We've gone around everything from, losing your parents, the menopause, changing careers, developing your career in the NHS, being a stay-at-home mum alongside working part-time, divorce, ADHD diagnosis, and then obviously you're sort of more going into your 60s, what that looks like. So we've covered so much, and I just want to say thank you for being so open. I completely recognise it's very difficult to come and talk about yourself in these situations, because it's one thing coming to talk about a business or a form of a business or a persona of yourself that's attached to a business. It's very different coming to talk about your children, your relationships, your past, your parents. So I just want to say thank you so much, because it is incredibly brave for you to do that. Any lasting words?
Well, I would just like to push that thank you back to you as well, because you've been an amazing scaffold in my life, and you've always been there in the background. You're not in my face. We don't, we are friends, but we're not best friends. We don't go out. We've never really been out. We have never been out together.
No, I've been to your house more than I think. Yeah.
But I think again, if you, ran the sort of whole financial advice, if I hadn't have had you, I probably would have spent all my money, because I think you're very down to earth about it. You're not someone who goes, right, this, and this. It's very down to earth. It's that discussion. It's made me feel confident about myself and managing my money.
That's amazing. So thank you. That's really nice of you. I mean, for people that have maybe not worked with a financial advisor before, what is it like working with? Let me rephrase that. What should people be looking for? And what questions should they be asking when it comes to working with a financial advisor?
So I think I said this to you the other day. I felt really. I didn't want to give my money to somebody because I didn't know where it was going. Like, hang on a minute, I'm giving my money to somebody else who's also got my money. So it's about that trust. So it has to be someone you trust. And I absolutely trust you. And I haven't ever had another financial advisor. I would never have even thought that I would need a financial advisor. And I think that's what I was speaking to a colleague of mine the other day, and I was talking about this, and she was saying, oh, maybe I need one. I went, yes, you do. So I would say that everybody needs a financial advisor, even if you're giving them money to do it. Everyone has to, everyone's an expert in their own right. So you're an expert with money. I'm an expert with in babies and whatever.
Yeah.
ADHD. I'm an expert in ADHD. So, I'm giving you my money to be my expert. And you might give me your money to be your expert. So
exactly that. And you obviously paid a fee for that advice, whether it's an ongoing service, and you've been an ongoing client of mine for quite a few years now, and then you would have paid an initial advice fee. Yep. Now, I wouldn't say I'm extremely expensive, but for a lot of people, even when I do say what the fee is, it can be it can sound quite a lot, because we have to have a liability insurance and things like that. But would you say that you make a profit out of that?
Oh my goodness, the amount my investments have grown, I don't even worry about whatever I give you anymore. I have no idea actually what I give you, because I can see my investments growing, and that's all I need to know.
Yeah, great.
Yeah.
Well, loved having you on the show today. It's been amazing. And I hope the next 10 years are as prosperous as fruitful as they've been over, I say, the last 5 for you, and that you continue to be spend more time with your kids and become a grandma, and all of that goes into that next phase of life. And I'm really looking forward to seeing where that goes for you. So thank you for joining us today.
Thank you. It's been great.
That's over and out for me and Penny today. I've hoped you enjoyed the conversation.
thank you for joining us today at Accelerating Your Wealth with your host, myself, Rebecca Robertson. I hope you enjoyed the show. Do subscribe and let us know in the comments any of your thoughts.